Hi there, this is Tricia at Club Scrap, and in today's workshop we'll be assembling the Daffodils page kit. I've got my instructions printed out, and again, you don't need to print them each time, but you can always look at them on a tablet. Keep those handy. I've got the beautiful Daffodils collection here with all the goodies, my trimmer, and my accordion pocket file to help me stay organized as I'm trimming all the parts and pieces. Let's get started. Let's set all of these goodies aside for a little bit later. Perhaps though we'll start by filing our photo mats into the pockets in our accordion pocket file according to where they'll be used in our layouts. First, I'd like to point out that there are two different shades of yellow here. One we're calling yellow, and then the other we're calling it gold. So just to make sure you keep that in mind as we work through all of the pieces. To find out where these go, I'll look in my ingredients listing for each layout, and we're starting out with 3 brown photo mats in the pocket for layouts 1 and 2. And then I'm looking at 3 yellow photo mats in the pocket for 3 and 4, 3 gold in the pocket for 5 and 6, and surprise, surprise, 3 white in the pockets for 7 and 8. Okay, then what I'd like to do is put everything in the order in which I'll be trimming it. So let's take a look at our instructions again. This is page 2 where I can see I'm starting with a white flowers print. Now we're calling it a white flowers print because it actually is white on the back. That gives us a really good palette on which we can print a lot of depth of color. So we need 2 of those right out of the gates. And then we need a white poem print, and we're calling it the poem print for obvious reasons. Here we have a poem about a daffodil along the right edge here, and that will be next in our stack. Then we'll go to a green plain. Next, we'll trim our cut aparts. I'm going to have you start out with the one with all the strips first, and then we'll go to this one with all the smaller elements. Finally, we're going to sort the remaining pieces in the order they would be used from layout number 8 on up to layout number 1. So first I'm going to find the 2 yellow plains, then 1 poem print, 1 green plain, finally 2 brown plains, and 2 gold plains. All right, now everything's in order, and let's get trimming. Once again, I'm starting on page 2 of my instructions with the white flowers print, and we'll place this into the trimmer right side up, which is an obvious orientation here, and we'll cut at 7.5 inches. So I'll find that number 7.5, stabilize in the clear bar, and then slide it down to 4 3/4. All of these pieces are used in layouts 3 and 4, so I'm going to file those away so I can find them later. Let's take that second white print with the flowers on it, and we're going to place this into the trimmer differently. Let's make sure that those more white-toned sketch flowers are on the right, and then that large single daffodil is in the lower left corner. And let's go ahead and trim this at 7 inches. And these 2 pieces are just so large. They're used on layout 7 and 8, but I'm not going to file them right now so that I don't weigh down my pocket file. Next, let's take the white poem print, and we need to be careful here as we're trimming, but in the way that we place this into the trimmer. So let's just rotate this so that the daffodil that's on here is in the lower left corner of my trimmer base, and then these brighter orange flowers are in the upper right. And let's cut that at 7.5 inches. 7.5. Now the instructions read to rotate this piece that's in our trimmer base counterclockwise and trim horizontally at 7.5 and 3 3/4. So now we have 2 strips that are essentially, very lightly decorated, that are the same size. Let's stack them together, place them horizontally into the trimmer, and we'll cut them at 3 3/4. Okay. Now, yes, each one of these is slightly different, so it doesn't matter where I file, which it doesn't really in the end. So let's just take the top one and put it, actually the top 3. 3 of these will go into the pocket for layouts 1 and 2. And then this last one here will go into 7 and 8. Now we also have two additional pieces, one with just the daffodil isolated with some of the poem, and then another longer strip. Both of those go into 1 and 2. Finally, let's grab our green plain, and we have quite a bit of trimming to do on this, but just take it step by step, we'll be fine. The first cut's at 11, so this is going to create a 1-inch strip, and then another 1-inch strip, so we'll cut at 10. Then 8.5, 6 3/4, and 4. Now let's take this 4-inch piece, we'll rotate it horizontally and cut it 9, 6, and 3. 9, 6, 3. All right. We'll take 3 of these rectangles. They should be the same size. We'll file those in 5 and 6. And then the last one here goes into 7 and 8. The next strip is kind of on the wider side. This also goes into 7 and 8. And now we have like a medium size one that goes into 1 and 2. And of course, if you let the pieces stack up as you're trimming, then it'll be easy to do the filing. The next piece in the stack goes in 5 and 6. Then we have 2 the same size that are remaining. One of them goes into 1 and 2, and the other we're going to trim several times. Now for a piece this narrow, sometimes I like to bring it down to below the line where the inches are marked, or even at midpoint, but my midpoint is so worn out from use of this trimmer that I'm going to bring it up here so I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, the first cut will be at 10 inches. So again, I'm making it level along that grid at 10 inches. Then 7.5. These pieces may seem weird, but it all makes sense, I promise. 5. And 2.5. Okay. So what I have here are a bunch of pieces that are the same size. These are all little rectangles. All of them will be filed into 7 and 8. And then you have one piece that's slightly shorter that goes into 1 and 2. Now it's time for our decorative strips. What we're going to do here is look for the tiny little registration mark here at the top edge of the paper and the bottom edge also. And we'll align that with the edge of my silver blade on the Fiskars trimmer. I'm looking at the top and the bottom, which you can't see. And my measurement here is 10 3/4 inches. And what I want you to do is just let that stack up and go on down the line and trim each element into a separate strip. Okay, I'm looking at page 1 of my instructions so I can find my placement map for all these pieces, otherwise just follow along with me. This first strip goes in pocket for 5 and 6. This nice yellow one, 7 and 8. This one I didn't find a home for, so I'm going to set it aside. This orangey one, 1 and 2. Also this narrow green one, Be Happy, Be Bright, Be You. This goes in 1 and 2 also. This yellow strip, 7 and 8. This also is a scrap. And then the All I See Is Magic, 5 and 6. Lastly, I'll get to my final piece to trim, and once again I'm going to start with A Beautiful Day in the upper left, so I'm trimming the narrowest strips off first, and we'll let them accumulate here to the right of the blade. And I'll rotate this piece so it's horizontal, and of course I want A Beautiful Day to be on my left so that I can trim the smallest pieces off first, and I'll let them stack up. Let's do some filing. This A Beautiful Day piece goes into 3 and 4. Our horizontal journaling prompt, that goes into 3 and 4 also. This next piece, it's a vertical journaling prompt, but I'll be using it plain side up in layouts 5 and 6. And then this Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy goes into 3 and 4. All right, let's take our next strip. Once again, smallest piece will be on the right, and let's separate these elements. We have this frame here with the daffodils inside, 5 and 6. Plant Dreams, 7 and 8. this vertical journaling prompt, 5 and 6. And this little Be Happy, 1 and 2. Now I want you to be careful when you do this next one. We'll start with these smaller pieces on the right, and then this will have to need a second vertical cut. Now when you have something like this where there's 2 smaller pieces, I don't really worry about having the element all the way on the top edge. I just bring it toward me where I can see a little better and make sure my registration marks are lined up. Push down firmly on the clear bar, and then those 2 pieces separate easily. The journaling prompt with the lines on it goes into layout 5 and 6, and then looking on the bright side, 3 and 4. Now we have some little pieces, but first let's file this daffodil image in 7 and 8. And all these small little pieces that make a poem go into 7 and 8 also. Next, obviously, we'll start with the small piece on our right, Spread Some Sunshine. This big bucket goes into 5 and 6. The daffodil on the circle, 3 and 4. One of the journaling circles, 7 and 8. One of the other journaling circles, 1 and 2. And then Spread Some Sunshine, 1 and 2. Last but not least, we have a bunch of squares to separate and one little strip. The mini smiles piece goes into 5 and 6. 3 of these squares will be filed in 3 and 4. Now the other 2 squares I didn't use, but hang on to them. Maybe you'll find a home for them on your layouts. They were designed to fit with these corduroy wrapped buttons. They fit perfectly, but I decided to use the buttons in a different way. Well, you can set aside your trimmer and we'll get going with our layout assembly. All right, I'm starting with the base for layout 8, which is this yellow, the brighter yellow, and take everything out of the pocket for layout 7 and 8, and you'll also need to grab those 2 larger pieces from the yellow print that you trimmed earlier. Now I'm starting with the layout 8, so that's going to be the right side of this image on your instructions. So let's just kind of place mark these pieces. I'm going to take the largest piece and it will end up just being flush and attached to the base of the page. And then I have a place marker here that I'll use. This is going to be the white photo mat, will be in the upper left corner. And what I'm going to do here is the distance between the top and bottom of that picture, or of that photo mat, I will match that on the left edge of the layout, and then also match the distance when I place this border strip to the right of it, so I have a nice frame around this area. Now I chose to leave this spot open, and I simply put a 4x6 or 5x7 photo would fit beautifully here, but I just didn't mat it with anything. I didn't want to. I didn't want to distract away from it. I just thought it was so pretty. Now in the upper right corner, I'm using this Plant Dreams pull weeds, and I'm just going to rest it right on top of that element. Now you also have this really sweet little circular shape, and we have these adorable scallop edge tags. Now you can handle these circles one of several ways. If you happen to have a 1 3/4 inch punch, or perhaps a steel thin die that you can use for this circle, that's fine. Trimming circles with the scissors can be difficult. Here's a tip for you. Make sure you open the scissors all the way so that you can have fewer open and closes, if you know what I mean. I'm just trying to cut quickly, of course, along this green edge of the circle. Now, it's not perfect, and that's okay, because the way we repair that a little bit is with our earth ink pad and our handy ink applicator. So what we do with this is just run it along the edge of that circle, and what that does is just disguises any kind of inconsistent cut marks. And if you'd like, you can also edge the scalloped tag with ink as well, just to kind of add a little depth to the layer. Now I didn't add any fibers or anything to the top of the tag. What I simply did is hid the hole for the hanger behind the cut apart, and then I placed the journaling prompt centered kind of on top of it. And I think it just gives it a nice little feel in that corner. It balances it out well. Now here in this quadrant, like if you imagine this has 4 areas, we'll add this last square and one final little daffodil in the lower corner. Again, this area is completely up to how you want to finish that up. Now I'll bring in the base for layout 7, and in my instructions I'll look at the image on the left side of this double page spread, and I'm going to begin with this 5x7 portion of that print. Now, and then we'll add our anchoring element here, this nested border strip. So I've got the title strip nested on green for contrast, and then we'll add our vertical photo mats, and then I have a series of green rectangles that we've trimmed, and lo and behold, they should fit our quote. Let's do a little yellow cup, a little yellow frill, a little yellow star, and that's a daffodil. Perfect. Now again, if this quote doesn't work for you, just flip them over and you can add a little caption for all of your photos and elements on this page. I just love how adaptable everything is. And that, my friends, is layout 7. Let's move on to layout 6. I've got my white poem print, and I'll take everything out of pocket 5 and 6. I'm going to begin by anchoring this side of the page with a border strip, and then you'll notice that this area of the strip is empty, so I'm going to rest this beautiful gold photo mat onto that spot. Then 2 vertical green mats, and look how they fit here. I've got a nice intersection happening in equal space that aligns everything out on the edges. And on top of those spots, I will add a vertical journaling prompt and the little daffodil image. I also have the plain side, so I can make this a photo mat. I got plenty of journaling going on here, but I need a photo mat. Also, what I did, stretched some of this sheer beautiful ribbon across, trimmed it to, I don't know, roughly 13, 14 inches. And then after you tape the ends around to the back, then you can come back with the rest of the ribbon here. And of course, it'll be a little easier because it'll be attached. I just tied a little knot onto the bow. And you can trim the ends. That way, rather than going all the way around and tying a knot, you're saving yourself a lot of ribbon by just tying a knot onto the stretched out ribbon. Let's take the base for layout 5. And once again, I took this ribbon, and I want to point out again that there is a grain direction to ribbon. So you can see if I'm holding it like this, it bends easily inward, but if I try to do it this way, it flips out. So that means it's kind of against the grain, and I want to attach it this way so it wraps around in a happy way. And I'll just tie a little double knot. Now in a case like this where the piece is so narrow already, I'm not going to tape anything on the back. Just go all the way around and snip the end. Pardon me, this is how we find these things. This border strip along the bottom edge here will be nested with a green strip. Okay, back to layout 5. So I begin with placing your gold mats vertically onto the layout, and on the bottom I'm going to put a spot for some journaling, and on the top I will layer a spot for a title. Finally, what I ended up doing here is placing the artwork for the daffodils in the milk can on top of the existing, and I pop dotted it to just add a little dimension to the page. If you prefer, you can just place the image somewhere else, but I just chose to nest them together. I thought it looked kind of fun. Lastly, I added one of these really sweet corduroy wrapped buttons just to the right here for a nice finishing touch on that page. So let's take a little review. Going all the way back to layout 8, that's all glued down. Layout 7, there's my little arrangement of the text on the left edge. Here's layout 6 with my sweet little bow on the end, and the ends taped on the back here. And here's layout 5 with the sweet little wrapped button, my bow, and my nested image over here on the left. All right, let's move on to the next pair of pages, 3 and 4. I've got my brown paper as the base here, and I'll take the contents of the pocket for 3 and 4. Set that aside here. This is a pretty simple assembly. We'll begin with, let's see, of the two, the more narrow strip from the floral print with the outlined flowers at the bottom. And then 2 horizontal photo mats will go right here. We've got a tag, and then you'll want to make that a circle. Whether you use your scissors, a punch, or a die cut, make this a circle, and of course edge this with the earth ink, and then tuck that in right over here. Now, I found these awesome, I don't know what you would call these, but I just think they're adorable. I was so excited when I found them. And what's cool about them is that they all start out attached, and you know, Deb loved this because she said it was so easy to, rather than having to count each individual flower, she could trim lengths and then put them in your kit. So this little piece, just one of them, I just love how floppy and yet dimensional it is. That'll kind of be tucked in right here. Finally, we'll take some ribbon. That's going to run, this is called a taffeta edged satin, a simple piece running from top to bottom with the ends taped around to the back. And in the lower right corner, I will have an opportunity for you to do some journaling. And again, if you don't really want to do the journaling, just simply put a photo in that spot. I've got the happy, happy, joy, joy. And then we'll go in our little stash of buttons and just add one little button right there. Okay, layout 3 begins again with the placement of these yellow prints. And I just kind of made like a crisscross here, starting with the most narrow piece with the etched flowers on the right, kind of about a ½ inch from the bottom. And the same thing here. This will go vertically about a ½ inch from the left. Then what I ended up doing is making what I would call a 3-part bow. So I would cut a length roughly the width of the entire layout, and then the rest of this can be used for my 3-part bow. So if I have a length that I can use to make a loop, sometimes my tape gets a little too big. You just need a small piece of tape and tape yourself a little loop. And then I take the next piece and I do it so the grain's running, so it's taped that way. And I find out where I want to put my loop on my ribbon. Flip it over to the back, tape the ribbon there, wrap it around. That's so nice looking. Now what we need to do is secure this again. So a small piece of tape there on the back once again. You can add a second piece if you want, just to hold that. I mean, this doesn't need to be pretty because no one's going to see it, right? So you flip it back over and just take the scissors and snip the end. Really nice element there. So that goes in that spot. Okay, then a vertical yellow photo mat next to this shorter beautiful day. Beneath all of this, looking at the bright side cut apart. Now, do you see this uneven top edge here? I love how this worked out. Add 3 squares. Then to each square, add 1 yellow button. And I attach these to the squares with our bookbinding glue, and a needle tip applicator works great. Finally, to balance that cool flower, chiffon flower on the right side, there's kind of a little bit of a tool that this is attached to. So you should see the big box of all of these pieces and how they look in the warehouse. Craig came in when the delivery arrived and wrapped them all around his neck like a big necklace. So a pair of these will balance the one on the other side of the page. So here we are, the finished version. Our little wrapped button, got some nice artwork here, but you can put a photo there if you need to. There's your sweet flower, your nested circle. And then the other side of the layout with the finished corduroy buttons and everything in place. Looks fabulous. All right, let's do our last 2 pages. I'll begin with my gold base and of course the contents of everything in pocket 1 and 2. Make sure it's completely empty. And Again, we'll start out with some nested anchoring strips. I do like to anchor my pages with things so that we don't have the floating problem. Now, whenever I attach something like this to my layout, I always make sure that, well, first I would nest this together so it's one piece. And then I would take my ruler, and let's just say I want this 2 inches from the top edge of my layout. So I'll line that ruler up, I'll put my adhesive on this, rest the border strip along the edge of the ruler, and drop it down to stick it in place, and with the full and confident knowledge that it's level, which seems to be a problem of mine. Okay, now 2 vertical photo mats will be placed here, and then I'm going to tuck this beautiful little poetry portion here, and I'm going to lower these slightly so that I'm not creating any nasty tangents here. That's nice. Okay, now remember when we had this tiny little 2-inch piece? I'm going to take my scissors and trim a 45-degree angle into this piece with my scissors. Now we have this other long skinny tag that says "Be Happy," and you see it's quite a bit longer than my little banner that I made. No worries, just kind of wrap it around there, and then this will end up living kind of tucked behind that photo mat. Isn't that a sweet way to use that? Just darling. The hole for the tag will tuck under the photo mat. The journaling prompt will sit on top, and I'll show you that on the finished layout. We have "Spread Some Sunshine," and then we're going to balance that out with the placement of the 3 final adorable buttons here. I have 2 of these chiffon flowers left, so I'll trim one more off my tool here and place that down in the lower right corner. I'm going to set this aside and grab my other base paper. This is for layout 1, and all the rest of these pieces should find a home on this layout. So we'll begin with the top portion of this white print, and I've got a nesting border strip here, and I'm going to leave a little bit of space between, about 1/8 of an inch between the print and the strip, and I will position my 3 squares beneath it. Again, important tip here, I use my grid ruler. I'll place it on my page, making sure the 0 center is located, so I have the reading of 6 on either side. Then after I have adhesive on this, I will drop it down, making sure that this is centered as well. So it's 1 7/8 is my reading on my left and the right, and these other 2 pieces will be placed about 1/8 of an inch apart. That way you know those 3 pieces are perfectly level, even, and equally spaced and centered. It's a beautiful thing, my friends. Now, to finish this super easy, I'm going to place this horizontal brown photo mat in the upper left corner. And we do have 1 more of our chiffon flowers left, so I will trim that. And what I've noticed is that the flower is just slightly smaller than the tag, so go ahead and take your ink applicator and some earth ink to create some contrast here, and then just nest the flower right on top of the tag, and then place that to the right of the photo mat. Really a lovely addition. Oh, speaking of the word lovely, this final piece can be placed right here. And again, I just use glue, my Club Scrapbook binding glue dispensed from this needle tip applicator. I just run it along the whole entire word and then place that on the layout and set it aside to dry. We'll take a look at those finished pages. All glued down, you can see how fabulous they look when they're finished. Now all you need to do is add pictures. Now, if you're watching this but you're not a member of Club Scrap and don't have this kit, I want to encourage you to join us. We have a good time every month, and after making all 8 layouts, I think the only scrap I really have is just a tiny piece of brown satin ribbon. Now that's what I call scrapbooking. Now be sure that you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any other workshops, and I'll see you next time.